Hey you, have you ever received a "you are fired" letter but still received a monthly income? Or have you ever broken a bone but went to the doctor's bills free? And have you ever got education for free? Well, all of these and more are part of the welfare state. I bet most of you have benefited from it at some point. But what has UCL economics to do with establishing the welfare state? Here's our imaginary character Luke, a boy from 1890s. He lives in the overcrowded East London slums, full of dirt and pollution. He doesn't even go to school because he works 12 hours at the local textile mill. You might ask, what has this to do with UCL economics? Well, quite a lot actually. Luke's family was one of the families surveyed by Clara Collet. Have you ever heard of her? I guess you probably have not. But now you will. In 1878, UCL became the first British university to admit women, and graduating in 1880, Clara Collet became one of the first women in history to obtain a university degree, and she became later the first woman in obtaining a master's degree. During the 1870s, coming from an educated family with liberal values, Clara Collet's parents were good friends with this man you might be familiar with. Marx helped Clara with her homeworks constantly, and he was really present during her teenagehood. Now, you might think that she was heavily influenced by him. Well, the reality is that instead of agreeing with his ideas of a socialist revolution, she took inspirations and formed a pragmatic ideology based on slow economic measures. After obtaining her master's in political economy at UCL, she was recruited by Charles Booth to work with him. They also worked with Beatrice Webb, one of the socialist founders of NASSEHI. Yes, you heard that right. This team worked on the first poverty map of London. This piece of work revealed the fact that 1 out of 3 Londoners were living in extreme poverty at the time. Clara's research changed how people felt about the miserable situation of families such as that of Luke. The public went from saying things like, "the idle and morally weak poor will only suck up the state help," to feel empathy toward poor children such as Luke. This shift, coupled with the late Victorian liberalism, guaranteed the electoral landslides for the Liberals in the 1906. Clara, the senior investigator of the Board of Trade at the time, provided economic research that swayed even the most conservative opinions, including Churchill's. This ultimately paved the way for the very first social welfare policies. For example, the Old Age Pensions Act of 1908 provided old people with a small monthly income. What's more, thanks to the Children's Act of 1908, the supply of orphanages around UK increased. Have they ever asked you if you received free meals during schools? Well, free meals can be said to come from the very same policy as well. Now, coming back to Clara, her numerous findings led to the Trade Board Act of 1909, and it paved the way for what we know today as the national minimum wage. Isn't that amazing? She even worked with Winston Churchill and William Beveridge, which altogether led to the National Insurance Act of 1911. This act established a primitive form of unemployment benefits and healthcare insurance. Well, this is Clara's story. Now let's talk about the second character from UCL economics in laying out the foundation of the welfare state. His name is Hugh Gaitskell. He was the head of the UCL economics department during the 1930s. When the Second World War started, he left his position to work for the Ministry of Economic Warfare. When the war ended, he sought election as a Labour MP and worked with Attlee on the Bank of England Act of 1946, which nationalised the Bank of England. Later, as the Minister of Fuel and Power under Attlee's government, he played an important role in the Coal Nationalisation Act. Despite all this, when he replaced Attlee as the leader of Labour Party in 1955, he found a middle ground between capitalism and socialism. He advocated for a mixed economy and downplayed the Clause 4 of the Labour Party, which is commonly known as the common ownership of industry. This stream of Labour Party had a huge influence in Tony Blair's mandate, and Blair even branded it as the third way. Shoot, Thatcher even claimed that Blair was the most formidable Labour leader since Gaitskell. Both Clara and Gaitskell made a huge difference to our society. In fact, many of the things that we cherish today, for example NHS, unemployment benefit, public transport, public education, and social housing can all be traced back to them.